This is the second in a series on the power and psychology of language, something I became interested in high school when I was reading the works of like Shakespeare and Orwell, and not just Animal Farm and 1984, but also his essays on the topic. And when I got a bit older, I read a book called Doublespeak by William Lutz. And in that book, he clearly shows that the government and other power structures recognize the fact that although thought controls language, language can also influence thought. So, for example, he showed that the government changed the Department of War to the Department of Peace. It sells better that way. You know, the military realized that instead of telling someone, oh, we're so sorry, your son or daughter got killed by their own side because the person mistook them for the enemy or they were too stupid to aim in the right direction, they call it friendly fire. Instead of saying to the public, whoops, we just slaughtered hundreds of innocent civilians because we missed the target, or we bombed the target, but they just happened to be too close, they call it collateral damage. All right, there are many examples in the book that really show that we have to be so careful of sometimes the obvious or sometimes the really scary, insidious ways that people use language to deceive, to manipulate, and to control you. And anyone watching this and other videos knows that I and other people have been fighting. I've been doing this for 15 years, but we've been fighting to try to tell people that it is a problem. And to this day, I've been saying this before, my colleagues still don't quite understand it, mostly because they're not in academia and they don't see what's going on here. So what is going on? Well, the thing is, we are social animals. So most people need to belong to a group or need to feel that they're part of a group, that their identity is somehow linked to other, people. And so these academics, government officials, and other people, they realize by labeling someone with a term like misogynist, alt-right, misanthrope, bigot, racist, homophobe, whatever you want to call them, okay? Even if it's not applicable to them, it's not appropriate, still, as soon as the person hears this word, they are being told quite clearly, you don't belong. Your voice is negated. You're not allowed to speak. You're on the wrong side of an issue. You're on the outside. You're excluded. You're alienated. And that is so psychologically disempowering when you feel that you're not part of the group or the right group. It also has the impact of basically telling everybody else around them that that person is hands off. They're dangerous. Don't listen to them. Don't advocate for them. Don't even look at them. And think about it. Would you be willing to go, oh yeah, I want to hear what this misogynist has to say. Oh, tell me what this, maybe this racist has some good ideas. Even if they're not a misogynist, they're not a racist. Most people are not willing to stick their neck out and say, let's hear what they actually have to say, because maybe they're not as bad as you're saying. Okay, that's the power of language. These particular words are so, again, powerful, and they evoke such emotion in people that they just back off immediately. It's not worth it to their own, well-being. And that's one of the most important principles of psychology. People are self-interested. The average person is not going to sacrifice their own well-being for somebody else. So once they hear some kind of label like that, immediately it shuts down discussion. No one wants to risk, again, putting their neck out and having it cut off. Now, there's a few points about that. One of them is that being in academia, not only am I seeing the effect it's having on the people who feel they have no voice. So you belong to the right, the wrong group, you're white privilege or something like that. That's not the only issue. When I see, whether it's in academia or in the media or other places, when I see people talking as if they have no power, they are disempowered. Who are these people? Well, that's the great irony. These are the marginalized groups that the so-called, the very maternalistic and paternalistic leaders, are trying to say that they're protecting. They're trying to give them dignity. They're trying to give them respect. They're trying to, again, empower them. But in reality, they're doing the opposite. They are saying they are oppressed by the patriarchy or some other mythical being. But in reality, the person who's oppressing them is the person, the ideologue, the academic, the person who's trying to say that we're sorry because you belong to this group. You are disadvantaged from birth. There's nothing you can do about it. You can try really hard, and trust me, I'm going to help you. But in the end, you're deficient because you've got the wrong skin color, the wrong gender, or the wrong sex, or the wrong sexual orientation or preference, etc., etc., etc. That's what this language is doing. It's not empowering them. It's not standing up for them. It's disempowering them. It's also doing something which all good parents need to do. And if a parent isn't doing this, they failed. It's basically teaching their child the sense of personal responsibility and accountability. And this is what's lacking in so many people today, because again, it goes back to this disempowerment. It's like, how can I be responsible for something if I'm just a poor little, black lesbian? Versus saying, you know what? You may have certain quote unquote handicaps. You may be disadvantaged. You may be biased against by certain people or certain systems. But that doesn't automatically preclude your being able to advance yourself. Now, we got to be careful once again with language, because black and white thinkers will take one side or the other. Either they will say, well, since she's a black gay woman, she can't do anything. Whereas others say, come on, suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I had it rough. You don't have it that bad. And the fact is, nothing I'm saying is denying the reality that certain people are born with disadvantages. Other people are born with certain quote-unquote privileges or advantages as well. But to assume that just because someone belongs to a certain quote-unquote group, that automatically puts them at a greater advantage. How the hell do we weigh these advantages? And again, this is where the language comes in. Okay, just by using this term privilege. So somebody who may have been born to very, very abusive parents, okay, somebody who had their sense of self obliterated from the day they were born because the parents tortured them, sexually abused them, told them they were worthless. Yet just because they happen to be, for example, a white male, you're going to assume that that person automatically has an advantage over, for example, a black woman who was raised in a healthy, loving family, who taught her to stand up for herself, who taught her to have a sense of self-agency and self-efficacy. That is what these people are doing. They are trying to basically put all these different people into different groups and say, because you belong to this group, you're bad, you're good, you're oppressed, you deserve this or that. And it is so reductionistic, it's insulting, and this is why I've been fighting to try to tell people, you've got to wake up. I've got 3 daughters, and I rarely use any genderized language with them. The only time I really do is if we're talking about sex, because then we're talking about interpersonal dynamics, and if they happen to like boys, I'm talking about boys and girls in this regard. But otherwise, my daughters have never heard me say anything about them as human beings, as students, as employees, and as contributing members of society that has anything to do with their gender. I'm teaching them to have self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence, and again, self-efficacy. So they believe that they can have an impact. Any parent who does anything other than that is failing. So this is, as I said, the second in a series of videos. Please check out the other videos where I'll talk more about the power and psychology of language.